clubs a go! Hello everybody. Welcome to the weekly book chat. Nearly weekly. We do it twice a month. I'm gonna have to try and find a slogan that will help with this. Oh man, I've got all the actual club members listening. They can't see that I try to eat the emojis that float along the screen. They're probably like, what is that noise? Just get randomly hungry. Hi everybody, happy book day. This is part 2 for Gods of Jade and Shadow. Lovely to have you there. I was just having a chat with the club attendees, just the club, cool kids of the club, about this book. I'm excited to talk about it. I thought that this was so anticlimactic and borderline problematic, so I can't wait to share and talk about this book because it is part 2. We're going full spoilers. We can talk about absolutely every single aspect in this book. Just want to do a few shout outs while I've got another heat pack. You guys remember my good buddy, the heat pack that I sometimes have around my shoulders? All right, well, now it's on the lower back because I've been experiencing some back issues. How fun. So don't mind me getting toasty here. Speaking of toasty, hello Toasty Poster there in the chat. Finished the book about 20 minutes ago. Woohoo! Down to the line, the wire. Down to the wire with that one. Radion Alien. Radion Alien. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to Book Chat. Ed209net. Thanks so much for the follow as well. I'm guessing you came via Twitter maybe? We do a book a month for Book Chat with Geek Bomb. We cover it the first and second Wednesday of the week. We take a week off. And that's to read an entire book for Nerdist Book Club, which happens on the final Wednesday of the month over on Nerdist's YouTube page. And we have a little sneaky after party that's not recorded, after show, which is a Q&A and further discussion that takes place in Geek Bomb's Discord under a sneaky locked reading channel that can only be unlocked if you sign up to Patreon, $5 a month. Not only gets you access to these 2 book chats where you get to participate in it, you also get to go to that secret sneaky after show as well. It's really great for everyone who wants to read more. Play the Board says, I've got 34 minutes left in the audiobook. I may just lurk tonight. Oh, Play the Board. What do you listen? What speed are you listening on? I was doing a clean 1.5 this book. A clean 1.5. Okay, Aaron's saying that the ending needs more as well. Thierry's just going to be lurking, no Discord. Got it. Avery says, I'm just glad we've got 2 weeks for Nerdist because Loch Lamora is dense. Don't I know it? I took it away with me to read, which I did. I read some when I was on my little trip to Solvang. You think I brought that book back with me? I thought I packed it, but then my suitcase is empty. I've unpacked my suitcase and I've got no idea where the book is. So I've had to spend my bloody 1 credit a month buying a book I've already got, which is great. Scott Lynch is a legend. But that's just really frustrating because I'm going to have to probably start again and just power read it. And I'm probably going to do that on 1.6, 1.7, which is about 7 hours a week leading up to book chat, which means an hour a day, which is my morning walk. Sort Ed. Play the Board. Tried 1.4. Still didn't make it. Oh, so close though. You know, you could listen to it on like 2.3, speed read it, and be 15 minutes late, but get to chat about the ending. Ed209 set says, you're new to me, and you must configure your Alienware API. Your stream is not paying AIPs. I know, I have to do that. Thank you for reminding me, Ed. I'm not a part of, I don't know why, but they've got to add me into the Alienware playlist as well. But I do have to configure my Alienware API because ARPs are important. Let me write that on my list. Figure out. Arena points, aren't they? They are points. Pronto. And I'll put 2 exclamation marks there. Points. Sweet, thank you for that. Aaron says I took the 30th off, which is my birthday. I will have plenty of time to finish the book if need be. 30th of March is your birthday. March is a good month, I hear. Kate says for some reason, even though it's a thicker boy, I find Locke a breezier read than the Sanderson stuff. And I'm thinking I should start on Hero of Ages now, since they are even thicker boys. Hello, Thanos Soul. How you going? Lovely to have you here. Avery, your birthday's next week. 24? You turning 24, Avery? Avery, I think you're our youngest book club member as well. You can't keep getting... You can't get older. That's my job.
Yeah, I'm turning 24.
That's exciting. I don't think anyone's younger than 24. I think you are our youngest book club member.
Sounds about right.
We don't have Colleen here tonight. I know that she said she wasn't able to make it. She gave us a heads up for that one. She's our oldest because she's like my second mum. I love Colleen. She's a grandma. We got a grandma, we got an Avery. We got a lovely plethora. It's a great group. So many March birthdays in book club. Hell yeah. Alrighty, let's go through it. Let's talk about it. Now, I want to do something. Not only do I want your rating out of 5, I want to hear something that you liked about it. And if you got something that you didn't like about it, let's go. Avery, go start with you. What'd you like? What didn't you like? What's your rating?
Well, my rating is 5 out of 5. Like I said last week, this is one of my favorite books. I love just the way that it's like a story about a story. Like it's very much just like, yeah, it's kind of like how myths are made and like everything. I love Sylvia Moreno-Garcia's writing style. I love that it has like a fairy tale feel to it, you know. Yeah, and I don't know, I guess, I don't know what to say for like what I didn't like.
You gave it a 5. You don't have to at all. Yeah, that's amazing.
Like, yeah, I love this book, so.
I love that you love this book, and I'd love to hear more about sort of like if we have some disconnect with it, because I don't think I understood the Mayan mythology as much as I could have, which could have helped. I was doing some research online, and someone said that the more they learned about or knew about Mayan mythology, the more it helped and hurt their understanding of the book, because she noticed, or the writer or author of the post, commenter, noticed that things would be included like kind of shoehorned in without sort of like a quality aspect to it. It was just trying to hit those notes, like, look how much I learnt, and shove it all in. But I mean, obviously a lot of this went over my head. But I love that you love that. That's great. There's nothing better than reading a 5 out of 5 book. Oh, it's so good. Fatal Flower. Hello, my love.
Hello.
Thoughts on this one?
So for me, I think the rating was a 3 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. The aspects of it that I think I really liked was the Mayan mythology. I thought that it was really interesting, just the folklore, the symbology. I didn't know a lot about it going in, and it was something that it piqued my interest enough that I did a little bit more just kind of investigation into that whole world. And so I really liked that. The parts that I didn't like, though, is that I feel like it's a bit more of a novel that would be better for like a middle schooler rather than an adult.
Oh, I hear you with that. There wasn't much depth.
It was very shallow. I felt like it was really simple. It was very predictable. There was no part during it where I, was actually scared for the characters that they might fail. The whole time I was like, no, they're gonna win. Everything's fine. The good guys win. The bad guys, they'll still be okay. It's all gonna work out. So I didn't have any kind of fear going through it that things weren't going to work out. It just felt so predictable, and I probably would have really loved it when I was in middle school, but it just didn't quite do it for me.
I have to ask, did you listen to it or read it? Oh, I know you've unmuted. I can't hear you though. I know we have this issue from time to time.
Hey.
Ah, got you. Yes, hello. Oh, lost you again. How odd. Nothing's coming through. Avery's commenting saying, look, that's fair, but my argument for that is that fairy tales and myths typically aren't very deep. That's a good kind of debate. Well, I'll check back in with you for that one because I'd love to hear the rest of that thought. We'll just try and figure out the mic sitch. But I'm also at a 3 out of 5. I listened to the book. I didn't sort of believe enough of the connection. I kind of agree with the comments that it had a surface level-ish kind of storytelling. I will say I liked that it read like a D&D campaign. It was a very linear story. You open the box. You unlock a god. You're tied to the god. You must collect 3 pieces of information, and in doing so go through the one after the other after the other. Once you have all 3, it then unlocks the next piece, and then you're at the final showdown, and then it ends. So it wasn't sort of like the only times that it would get out of a linear-esque type storytelling is when you would change and switch perspectives. Doing my research, some people liked it, some people didn't. I thought it was a little bit refreshing, but I didn't like the ending. I felt it to be incredibly anticlimactic. I guess it's like I'm not commenting from someone who knows a lot about Mayan culture, but like the second half of the book where it's like I almost wanted to have like a bullying and self-harm and suicide trigger warning, because this god basically looks at Cassiopeia and is just like, or you could just kill yourself. Just kill yourself, right? Like that's all you're worth. That's your role in this. End your life. And I was just like, what the hell? That was just a little bit much for me. But I didn't really get to know who Hudenka was. I didn't know who Vuku really was. I didn't really get too much of a sense of who Martine really is. So I'm in the 3 out of 5 camp as well. Aaron, where are you at with it all?
I'm kind of like a 3.5. Like overall, it's a good story, and there was many elements I did like about it. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, that it just felt very simplistic, and like a lot of the encounters, especially like when they're going on the journey to find the different pieces for Hudenka, it felt like it was all wrapped up a little too neatly. Like there was very little struggle to obtain any of it. Like, and then you kind of like figure, then it kind of becomes a little more apparent. Well, it's meant to be easy because he just wants you to be weakened. Like his brother wanted you to be weakened was the whole thing, which felt kind of cheap to me. Like there's no real high stakes for success or failure. It's just one more step along the road.
Agree.
And the ending just felt like, okay, great. She's literally driving off into the sunset with Lore, the demon guy.
Who she doesn't really trust, yeah, or like.
Who she doesn't trust.
Yeah.
Who she met for like all of a day, barely.
Yeah.
Who tells her, by the way, cut off your hand as an escape route, just in case.
Yeah, which is interesting because that, in a sense, was a stake. Because I agree, like there were very few stakes or things that were at risk. You know, when we learned that like if Rukukame gets into power, he's going to want blood sacrifices. He's going to want a different way of like ritualistic sacrifices, and you're like, oh, that would be awful. But yeah, it just skates along with no real challenge, consequence, anything. Like, you know, the first half of the book, the ghosts arrive, and it's like, oh, it's a bit spooky, but it's like nothing happened. And the other one, it's like, oh, the woman's trying to get under the spell. Oh, no, it's fine. What were you gonna say?
It relies heavily on like the myth structure, like, you know, everything's just like, you know, quickly encountered, quickly resolved, and then quickly moved on with.
Yes.
But one thing I actually even hated more than her just literally driving off in the sunset, we have no idea what's happening with her family back home.
No.
Like,
her beloved
what's her mother doing? And her daughter, that the only reason she's even in this place is because her daughters needs a place to stay almost. But what's she doing? What's happening in the family? Is their wealth just gone? Is Hudenka that, you know, vindictive that he'll just basically say, all right, every wealth and, you know, thing that you're gaining from my brother, you're done. You're cut off.
Well, he gave her the pearls, and straight away the demon's like, oh, let's pawn them off, see how much they're worth. And she's just like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll grant you language. All right.
This is a very useful skill, actually.
But we never saw it. We never saw what that would be like, and we never saw her struggle without language this whole time.
No, we never realized, oh, she's literally speaking Spanish this entire time, except then you get in that one moment where you're in the train station or wherever, or the customs, and it's like, oh, I guess I was speaking English the whole time.
Right. Like, if I'm building a D&D campaign, it's like this thing where it's almost like the armor has a missing kind of like piece into it. So it's like, once you get it, it's like, oh my gosh, now it's complete. I don't know, it just felt like as a reward, it didn't serve a purpose super much.
It felt like a early D&D campaign, or like the what do you call it? Basically like the pre-made D&D campaign where it's like, it's really hard to fail this thing.
Yes. And you're rewarded with a chalice. What does it do? Yes.
Gives you infinite water. We live by the ocean. What does that matter?
Yeah. I think I'm a bit spoiled as well because a majority of us have read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Sorry. Why do I keep getting the name wrong?
Better book to read by comparison.
I loved Mexican Gothic. I think I gave that a 5 out of 5. Colleen's here! Yay! And Lisa's here as well now too. Yay. I loved Mexican Gothic. I loved that darkness. I was scared in that book. I thought that the horror elements were really well done, and I think I was a bit spoiled because this book, it felt very safe. And Fatal Flower, I agree with what you're saying, where it's got a very, not even YA kind of feel to it, because it doesn't sort of scare or it doesn't feel like there's anything like at risk here. It did feel safe and sort of like palatable for a younger person. Earlier, Fatal Flower, I asked you if you had listened to the book or read it. I want to try and see if I can grab that answer from you.
I read half of it and then I listened to the other half because I was trying to see if maybe I just wasn't quite getting it. And if one way would work better than the other. But I didn't really enjoy it either way. And I think I said last week that listening to the audio, my husband, he thought that I was listening to Siri because it was so just weirdly monotone.
Yes, and it definitely sounded like a preschool teacher talking. Yeah.
Oh, it was so bad.
Yeah. And that's why when you were saying that it did feel like a middle school kind of book, I was like, I wondered if you'd listened to it, because that's how it was narrated, in that, I'll talk slowly so that you can catch up because you're a simple child, had that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, for sure. I know, though, that even when I was reading it, it seemed like, I don't know if it was just me being hyper aware of exclamation marks, but it seemed like there were a lot of exclamation marks in it, where it just came across as, very young or trying to talk kind of excitedly, like you would to a younger kid.
Got it. Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's just me because I'm that person that in my emails I have to like do the exclamation check at the end, like, okay, do I have too many?
It looks like
That just
Morse
seemed
code.
like it had a
Exclamation
lot
mark,
of
full stop. Exclamation mark, full stop. And mine's a dance. Yeah. But I hear you on that one. Okay. I'm glad I got that. Your sound is just absolutely perfect. So that's good.
excellent.
Emberance Aaliyah says, they are very different, but a small part of the story reminded me of Sandman in terms of a powerful entity being trapped and then having to look for the pieces that would restore their power once they are freed and released. Agree. And I think having Sandman fresh on our minds, having read it for Nerdist, we're talking about deities. We were exactly, that is a very formulaic approach where it's like a deity has been trapped, and it's the duty of like a passed down generation to keep them trapped as well. And then them sort of like, usually with Sandman, he was getting more and more power. In this instance, Hudenka was getting less and less power because he was getting more and more humanity. But I love that comparison. The other comparison that we had that we discussed last week was the similarities between American gods and this as well. Again, you've got old gods in a present-ish or a more modern setting, where they rely and only have sort of substance with worship. And I always think that that's really quite interesting, sort of like the religion versus the faith element of it all, and a deity's purpose in the end of all of this. And if everyone just stops thinking about them or worshipping them, or if they cease to exist in sort of like the mortal landscape, do they continue to exist as well? Oh, I'm going to get into hashtag reading as well. Gotcha. Colleen, we skipped over you only because you weren't here, but I'm so glad you are here. What did you give this book out of 5? What did you like about it? And did you have a gripe at all?
Well, I guess I give too many 5s, but I really like this. I'm so intrigued by the Mayan culture and the myths, and I've for a long time kind of looked into that. And so I might have excused a lot just because I was looking at it culturally and from a myth standpoint, and not concentrating as much on some of the details that everyone else is. And I think a lot of times when I'm reading a book and someone is in danger like this, the whole world was at stake, I just kept thinking, well, I know she's going to be okay because the earth hasn't been turned over to the god of death, and we're not sitting on piles of bones, so must have worked out.
I am agreeing with what Kate's saying. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being easy to please, Colleen. If you love books and love reading and you get something out of it, have all the 5s. Hand out as many of them as you want. It's your system, and I think the world's a better place when we have 5s in our eyes. You can quote me on that one. But you're right, because this is based on actual mythology that has been taught, we know the ending. So maybe that's why the stakes aren't sort of like super there the entire time as well. It's kind of like if there's a based on a true story, it's like, well, the person's alive, we kind of know that they're going to be okay. But if that's the case, if you know the ending when you start, then the road there has to be gripping, amazing. That's your story. And I just didn't really feel like I got it in this one. Colleen, if you did, hell yeah, I love that. Glad to have you here too. Jeff 2.0, moving over to you. How did you find the book? What'd you give it out of 5? What'd you like? What you didn't like?
I gave it a 3.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the book and the journey. It was a little, like episodic. Like there's little vignettes that were a little unconnected, but I felt like, oh well, they're going to. I was looking forward to kind of the resolution in the running the maze. And then when we got there, I was definitely a little disappointed. I felt like they were going to kind of explain the rules a little more. And then the actual resolution I thought was unearned and unexplained, and I didn't understand that. I didn't feel like it made a lot of sense.
Agree. I want to put
I
in
felt
like
like,
a. Oh, you go.
no, no, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the great storytelling. I'm just the movie Slumdog Millionaire, where he's sitting in the hot seat for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he's asked all of these questions, right? And he knows the answers, not because he's studied, not because he's completely educated, but because he has lived a life that has put him in the most precarious situations. And during the moment, you're able to look back at all of these pivotal moments, and they fall into place at the end. I was kind of hoping for something like that with this story. What were the lessons that she was learning, Cassiopeia? What were the pivotal moments? What was Hudenka directly or indirectly teaching her? And then how was it applied to this last important be-all quest? I think it kind of happened in a way, but it's like when Fuku-Kame was like, sacrifice yourself and then everything, I'll take care of you. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll sacrifice myself to him. You're like, that's not, you didn't learn shit. What? Like, I don't. So I hear you with that. Like, it would be really cool. Like the snakes, how did she know that snakes were an ally? I mean, Hudenka gave an offhanded comment about don't let them tell you what to do. You tell the road what to do. And we kind of saw a little bit of that. We'd never seen this bat before. It'd be cool if like we'd had like somehow seen or heard a bit of folklore that this could be tied into. I don't know, it just was, yeah, really kind of like out of nowhere. And
Right. It didn't seem to tie back, and I wish they would have explained. They made it clear that there were kind of rules to running the maze, but I didn't feel like they explained what they were.
Yeah.
And then if this was a thing that, you know, fit into the rules, I feel like both of the gods would have been completely aware of it. And it would have been discussed before. So I don't know. It was a strange ending to me.
I hear you with that one. Aaron's correcting me. The bat was in the dream. The bat was a flying monster in the dream. Whoops, not good. A lurking frog says, I felt there wasn't much in the way of cleverness in the solution to any of the problems that they encountered. It was all just brute force and deus ex machina. Agree. I completely agree with you with that one. And that's the thing. It's like we really vouch for Cassiopeia as a character because she's got this spunk, this drive, this desire to live and to be alive, like, you know, like live each day at its fullest. And I was like, this is a woman who's really quick, and her personality is, whoa, that was loud for me. KStev99, thanks so much for the follow. Welcome to Book Chat. We are currently talking about Gods of Jade Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Lovely to have you here. And to all the lurkers, a big hello. Thank you so much for dropping by for Book Chat and doing some lurking. If you want to say hi, I'd love to shout you out. Because you could be anywhere on any stream right now that you're here with us. And I appreciate that. Avery says, I did my thesis on fairy tales. Oh, that's fascinating. And how they've changed over time to fit into the culture and time in which they were written. So to me, this was just a fairy tale changed to teach Mexican history / culture. Avery, I think, did you touch upon the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales and then how they all got Disney-fied? Was that a big part of your thesis?
That pretty much was my thesis. Yeah, it was about the different, like, why we have the Disney versions versus like the Grimm brothers versions and all that stuff. And I kind of followed them. I mean, it was just a shorter thesis, so I mostly focused on European fairy tales. But yeah, that's pretty much what my thesis was.
What's your favorite or the most extreme sort of change that was made to accommodate for the coddling of the little ones?
In the original version of Sleeping Beauty, which was Italian, originally, it was really interesting. There was like, I don't even remember exactly, but it was like really kind of like, I guess you'd say raunchy for the time. There was like all these like side characters that were like that, you know, there's lots of like, they're like prostitutes and all of these other like characters like that were like active roles in the story. And she was like, I don't remember exactly, but she was, I can't remember exactly how it was, but it was like, it was just wild. It was like this, it was part of like a series of stories about, where all of these characters, like these, the help in like a rich household were like telling these stories about like the people they were helping out basically.
Yeah, right.
And like making them up and at the time, the rich had like all the power in like Venice and in Florence. So they were basically talking about how the rich people have no like morals and all this stuff, and it was basically, that was the whole thing. And then obviously Sleeping Beauty we have now is she sleeps and some dude wakes her up and then they fight a dragon. So
and she's really pretty and he's really perfect.
Yeah.
She's not even a mouth breather. Like, it's just, yeah, unobtainable. We are chatting in the comments about, and Colleen brought up this amazing point. I wonder if some of our expectations for these characters are based more on Western stereotypes. To which Kate's like, yeah, bury that, Colleen. So much of fairy tale expectations is built in the white expectations. And I think, Avery, you completely just touched upon that. Your Sleeping Beauty with the Italians is gritty, and the prostitutes and the real life look at things, and the lower classes commentary on their mistreatment and the greed and the corruption and the disgust of the wealthy class. I think that's like super interesting. I would love to know the psychology behind the long-term effects of being raised on white expectation fairy tales, and I actually am living proof of this. This is an overshare, so I apologize, but we're hitting on fairy tales and Disney princesses here. Last week in therapy, we're trying to get to the bottom of why I'm struggling to find someone that I feel is an equal. And we kind of realized that by growing up on Disney movies, the things that I learnt were, you can fall in love by a glance, not know anything about them. Fucking Little Mermaid, she doesn't even say a word, and he's just into her. That they do live happily ever after. That the prince is just perfect and knows what to do and say and will sweep in and rescue her and never shows any fault. And for me, this has set an incredibly unrealistic expectation of my actual reality. And so there's got to be like so much of a discussion there of the damage that the westernized fairy tale has done, especially back in the 90s when, you know, apart from sort of Jasmine and Aladdin, a lot of these princesses looked like me. What a head fuck, but also what a luxury that I was like, oh my gosh, do I want to be Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty today? You know? Kate, do you have anything that you want to add to... There it is. I knew it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, Kate.
Oh, I just used the example of Turning Red and the online discourse that's happening with that right now.
Yeah.
Where it's a movie that's got the same sort of hallmarks in terms of, you know, humans living a life, but it's from the perspective that's not shown usually, i.e. the white heterosexual experience. Mm-hmm. And now people are saying, it's like, I can't relate to this. Made for me. I'm being excluded from cinema because of, you know, identity politics, insert whatever screeching protest that there is. Yep. And that's the exact thing that's like, you see it with a lot of things when the oppressor is, like, you know, when equality, the oppressor feels like the oppressed, right?
Yes.
And then they rebel against it because they feel that because they're not being shown 99% of the time anymore, that something about their identity and their childhood is being ripped away from them.
Challenged.
It's like, you are now, and it's, that's not true at all. It's the way they feel about it, right?
Mm-hmm. For
And
those
the same thing where you could have, it happens a lot of the time with people of color books, where you could take a book that it's like people give quote unquote valid criticism to, on like Goodreads or something.
Mm.
But if you find a white book that's very similar to it, stuff's excused.
And we're doing that right now. If I could put a mirror up to sort of, definitely for me, where I was just like, I don't know enough about the mythology to really kind of understand or appreciate her storytelling and her inclusion of the mythology. I'm also saying that this is a little bit simplistic. Am I also so sheltered because my fairy tales, no one commits suicide or sacrifices themselves? And is that jarring for me? I think that these are all incredibly brilliant points to bring up, which is why these sorts of discussions are so fantastic. But I think, Colleen, thank you so much for starting that conversation where it's like, this is a Mexican-Canadian woman who is writing about Mayan folklore in the 1920s. And I think that this is obviously sort of like, instead of what happened with Turning Red, where the 40-something-year-old white straight critic just decided to opt out and they were exhausted trying to even understand the scope of and the perspective of this movie. This is when you learn. And I can say, yes, I struggled to connect with it. I didn't feel like the characters had depth. I'm used to this sort of thing, and that's what I tend to gravitate towards, or this is what I've been conditioned over decades to expect in a way. But that's why, you know, when Avery's here going, I gave it a 5. Colleen's like, I give it a 5. My first question is like, yes, I want to see this book through your eyes. I want to learn why this book is resonating with you. Because us 3 out of 5s are all here. Like we're kind of on the same page with that, and we're having that same experience. And I think I could safely say that we are all white as well, and we've grown up. We're in a geek book club. We've grown up on a lot of the same sort of material here, and a lot of that's written by a straight white guy as well. So I think that these are really interesting talking points, and I'm glad that we're able to kind of have these discussions. To go back to the Disney princess, why was that not allowed? I'll let that. The Disney princess syndrome, as we'll call it. Colleen says, my mum once told me that when my prince finally came, I'd be washing dishes for him. Vaden says, basically the issue comes from a perfect romantic spark instead of building a relationship step by step. Yes, a combination of both. So it's like, when I see the potential and I get really, really excited, I have projected and projecting this fantasy of what it should look like, sound like, be like, before actually being present in that particular moment. And therefore I'm holding them to an incredibly unrealistic expectation that they're kind of destined to fail. And I'm so caught up in what it should be that I'm not focusing or present with what it really is. And that's, you know, I'm better with that now, which is really nice. But yeah, that's like, in a lot of ways, I have really high expectations on a lot of things, but myself included. Ember and Talia says, in the King Killer Chronicles, there's a distinction made between stories that a group shares with the world to entertain, or whatever, and the stories that they tell themselves that are meant to define and remind them who they are. I could read this story as a way of defining / exploring identity in that particular culture. Absolutely. And I think that I'm speaking for myself, and if anyone else wants to jump in with their thoughts, I was definitely focusing and I guess expecting entertainment. And that for me, I guess, was prioritized over defining and exploring identity. Great conversation. Aaron, you had a point about Cassiopeia that you liked?
Yeah, So I was basically saying I was at least glad that she didn't feel like a typical female protagonist who is just almost along for the journey. But she kind of was, but she still had her own sense of agency in a lot of ways, because Kame clearly would have failed miserably without her help. So,
and he was inspired by her. Yes.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it's like she has a temper. She, clearly isn't afraid to show that something is pissing her off, and isn't afraid to stand up for herself, but also is smart enough to know I need to pick my battles. This is probably the moment where I just need to keep my mouth shut and put up with it in this moment, because it's not going to go well if I do something, because it clearly didn't go that one time when I hit my cousin in the face with a stick.
Yeah, and he cried.
Yeah, and he cried, and then cried to mom. But she's in an environment where it's like her entire family is abusive towards her. Her mother is her only ally in this, except her mother is also telling her in a passive way, just like, basically put up with it. It's like, just smile and live to see another day kind of thing. It's like, I get it, but it's like, you're not helping the situation. You're just indirectly making it worse.
Yeah. I agree with you, though. I think she does have a lot of agency. She's got a lot of kind of like, with someone who should have been beaten and broken down, she did not need rescuing. She was like excited to go on the adventure. She wasn't escaping or fleeing. She was just hungry for her freedom. Colleen, I missed being able to say goodbye to you, but I saw it in the chat. Have a fantastic rest of the afternoon and evening. Thanks for joining in. We will see you in a few weeks. Jimmy is relating to this. My mum told me when I was younger, if I didn't serve a purpose, then no one would want me to get married. Yeah, it's an identity thing, big time too. Kate, let's have a chat about, and then we'll get back to the ratings. And Lisa, you are next. What did you give it out of 5? What did you like? What you didn't like? But Kate, I'd love to hear more about the mold of fantasy books currently and how it's different to this.
The mold of the super popular fantasy books is grimdark. So like, Game of Thrones and like that kind of thing where everything is dire all the time, everything's gritty, and everyone's evil and downtrodden, and they're very dense with lots and lots of characters, maybe lots of different perspectives like Game of Thrones, and so many things are happening that you can't have a standalone book. You would never be able to resolve everything that was happening in one of those stories in one book. So they
Wheel of Time
expand out into sequels. Yeah, well, so there's a lot of books that kind of, because with Game of Thrones and like that becoming so popular, those, like when Twilight was the big hotness, everything was like Twilight, right? Because that's what sells. So when a book comes like this that's optimistic, it feels, like you guys said, like a middle grade book, because everyone's not suffering.
Yes.
They're not, in the mud, bleeding to death, cursing the gods.
Yes.
Seeking revenge. So when she is optimistic, like, you know what, Martine, watching you suffer isn't going to make me happy. I don't want that. I just go home. And it's seen as like, she's too, because I said in an earlier post that kind of like optimism is seen as childish because of just the way our society is like, well, no, you have to be an adult. You have to, go to your job every day. You have to be like, stop all the things that make you enjoy, like toys and stuff.
And it's
because that's for kids.
And we're suffering. Yeah, we are in a state of suffering. Yeah.
So when she's not like that, she's seen as childish. Even though it's like one of the reasons. Well, I'll get back into that when I get to my rating. But that's my point was on that.
Interesting. I love that. That's great. Lisa, over to you. Out of 5.
I think I'm gonna fall probably on like a 3.5. Like I was saying last week, it did come off young to me, and I just didn't connect with any of the characters. Yeah. Like I started to kind of get more into it in the second half, but then it just fell flat for me. the only thing I really took away from it that I really liked was learning kind of about the mythology, and that would be something that I would like to look more into on my own, because that was really interesting to me. But I just didn't connect with any of the characters. I hated her cousin.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the way, I don't know if it was how she writes, and I think I wrote earlier, I think I might just not like her writing style, because I wasn't really a huge fan of Mexican Gothic either.
Okay. Okay.
And I know I was kind of in the minority with that, because everybody was loving that book, and I just wasn't a fan. And that was like a totally different genre too. So I don't know what it is, but I'm not clicking with her writing at all. So
yeah, no, fair enough. And I think that when you know what you like and it's not it, like there's no shame in that either. Like if this is, for me, the disconnect is like I love character development, and I love like having them so fleshed out that they're almost living and breathing. And I think going back to what Avery was saying, this definitely had a story within a story. Like they felt like beautiful drawings on a page. And that's like neither's right or wrong. And this book is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. This is a fairy tale, and it's, you know, supposed to provide this story. And I think the kind of books that I find myself drawn to are ones that have like a lot of character arcs. And is that going back to Kate's point, where it's like usually when you have big epic fantasy books, it's like it's a long burn. They're able to go through so much character development because there's 12 books to get there. You know, we're going on a full journey with them, spared no expense, John Hammond kind of thing. And this is like a really contained book where it's like you got to hit the beats, you got to move on to get the whole thing happening. So yeah, totally understand where you're coming from. Michelle, hello, love.
Hello.
What did you think of this one?
I really liked it. I've been trying to sort out my thoughts on it. I give it a 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. What was it when you started? What was it when you started before all the discussions?
It was still a 4 out of 5. I was just trying to like think about how, like, why it's a 4 out of 5 for me. Mm-hmm. It's not a 5 because like I think it's a good book. I'm not sure. I think it's a great book. Mm-hmm. I was listening to it while I was doing some intense cleaning, and it really worked for me while I was doing that.
You're doing your own Cinderella?
Kind of, yeah, basically. Well, I also really like books with a lighter touch. I love middle grade and YA and children's books. Like, to this day, I still love to reread or read new books for, you know, younger folks. I like the simplicity of language. I think it's very impressionistic, which, like, to your point, like, this feels like a bunch of beautiful drawings on a page. I really like that. It's kind of like why I really like mythology and tales about mythologies, because it is so impressionistic. And, you know, I like a story that has a more vignette structure to it. I didn't miss a big climax or anything.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I love the 1920s. So being able to see it from the perspective of, you know, 1920s in Mexico was cool for me. And I liked the observations of the impact of colonialism from like someone who's from there and not from like a colonizer's point of view, because that is like traditionally how we see other lands.
Yes.
In historical fiction is through that, you know, the eyes of the Europeans. So I did really like that. But yeah, I thought it was good.
You make great points. I love that as well. But I also loved sort of like seeing the influences of the American culture trickle into Mexican culture in the 20s. I just thought that like the music, the fashion, the styles, and that was more explored in the first half of the book and not the second half of the book. But yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect as well. Again, because like I'm Australian, like I'm still learning about American culture every single day. So to see that side of it in a whole new decade, yeah, that was awesome. And she did use language that I felt was like you know, you could almost smell it and see it and hear it. You know, it was like super enriching in the culture side of it all. So yeah, I think that's a really great point too. Fatal Flower, you made a really good observation. Did you want to unmute and talk us through your comment?
Yeah, so I was just saying that it felt like the storytelling, it was really swift. So it just shifted really quickly from one location to the next. You very quickly got introduced to characters. They would be in there for a pretty short amount of time. And then you either didn't get to, you know, be reintroduced to them again during the story, or if you did, it was some small little fleeting thing. And because it was kind of moving so quickly, it came across as a lot more shallow, where I felt like I couldn't, you know, get a sense of the characters, get a really good sense of the settings, because it just kind of blew through them all.
Yep. And it was hitting a pace, you're right. But to get through all of that, to focus on the story, it meant that the characters weren't able to be explored as much. Avery actually, in the reading Discord, posted her thesis, which I lit up when I saw that, because I was actually going to ask, but I felt that was incredibly, I didn't want to feel invasive, but I'm so fascinated by it, so I can't wait to have a look at that one. Thank you so much for being generous with your words on that. And Fatal Flower, absolutely agree with you on that one. You know, there was a priority. It's a story. So storytelling and hitting those beats and moving through was the priority for that one, which is why I feel like it's a really great foundation for a D&D campaign. Like, I kept thinking that throughout the whole thing, where I was like, you do this and this unlocks the next thing. You go to the next area. You got the quest, you've got to do the thing. All right, move on to the next area. Like, even with the ghosts, it's like, roll a d20, how many ghosts show up? There's like a really cool sort of like role play foundation for that. But I was like, that's kind of what I would love to see more of this. People being able to immerse themselves into the story a lot more and build the character and make those sort of like, you know, deeper decisions and have a deeper understanding as well. Vaden says, I would agree that the character development was not really there in general. However, Hudenka was very interesting to me in how he changed as he became more and more mortal. Yes, I agree. They were some of my favorite moments where he would ebb and flow in front of her, where he would start looking more and more human, and he was wearing human expressions and he was feeling human emotions. They were my favorite parts. But then he kind of again was reminding her, this isn't what I usually look like. I'm not going to remember this. I don't really have a heart. And there was a detachment as well. But I mean, going back to the conversation, is that because I'm used to sort of how fairy tales go, and this didn't play by those rules. Yeah, interesting. Lisa says, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm definitely a character reader more than needing great plot. So not being able to ever get deep enough into the characters, since the story was just go, 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 I just couldn't connect. Yeah. I get it. Kate, you're up. Give us those thoughts and ratings.
I gave it 4 out of 5. And the reason I didn't give it 5 was because of the other characters besides Cassiopeia. That she was an incredible character. I really admired this character because, like I said, she was so optimistic, and it's just not me. It's traits that I find admirable. Like the whole thing with Martine, where could have told them to torture him for all eternity.
Yes.
And me, being a sadist, would be like, yes, I want them to kill everyone he ever loved. So he would have to live with the agony of their deaths, and it would like keep me warm at night, the pleasure of it. But she was just like, no, like I'm not going to hold on to these terrible emotions. I just want to be free. You can just go home. You actually don't even have to stay there. You can go do something else. Because, Martine obviously was not happy at that house either. But
no, what an insecure wreck of a person.
But she was such an amazing character, and she carried this book the whole way. Like, I loved her as a character. But the other characters just, didn't have the same level of leaping off the page with how alive they were and how much, personality they had.
Yep.
And so that was where it didn't get 5 stars from me.
Yep. You're right. She did outshone. She outshone the other characters, but it also, when you shine that brightly, it casts a light on where it's lacking. So I hear you on that. I also love that moment that you're talking about, which is the ending, where there is a chance for vengeance, revenge, punishment. She's been treated so horribly by him, Martine, her cousin, her whole life, that she's able to kind of like turn the tables. But again, with the symbolism here with duality, you are seeing the chain of abuse, the cycle of abuse stop. And it's Cassiopeia that's like, no, I have a choice in this matter. You're saying that I'm able to kind of like punish him. I don't want to do that. And then you see the same thing happen with Hunkame and Vukukame, where it's like, I can put him in a box and I can make sure he never comes out and sees the light of day. And I think that seeing, and this is what I liked about it, seeing a god learn from this young woman human traits like compassion that not all humans possess, as we've seen with Martine and his bruised freaking ego, but just demonstrating the, I don't know, greater path in life to take. But I love that they mirrored each other. You've got the brothers that hated each other, and that cycle continued, and then you've got Martine and Cassiopeia that just had like discourse that they weren't able to see eye to eye with as well, and that mirrored, and it was able to stop. So yeah, that is happily ever after a little bit. Jimmy, what did you give this one out of 5? What did you like? What did you not like? And Toast Press, I'll read out your comment too.
Okay. Well, I was going back and forth between, the numbers, and I decided on 4.
Okay.
4 out of 5.
Yep.
The reason why I chose 4 out of 5 was because I know this is going to sound like a complete mama's boy, but I know that my mother would have loved this book.
Oh, I love that.
And the reason why I know that she would love this book is because one of the first folk tales that my mother ever told me was about Cassiopeia.
Stop it.
So yeah, and she I don't remember exactly around the time it was, but the first Clash of Titans, with Mark Hamill or Harry Hamlin, whatever his name was. Anyway, Perseus and Cassiopeia, and they had that whole thing. So my mom, after telling me this story, we went to see Clash of the Titans in the drive-in movie theater. And so I was just thinking that. But back to the book. Now, the book is, like I said, it is well written. It has a very quick way about it. Some of the things, though, like when I was reading it, but mind you, I was reading this book while in the hospital while looking after my dad. It's not to be a big of a downer, but so I would sometimes get distracted, by certain things.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking while reading this book, man, I really want Kotal Khan from Mortal Kombat to come in here and spice this thing up. Now, I understand if you're not too familiar with Kotal Khan, that's fine. But basically, he's like a Mayan god in Mortal Kombat.
You're just looking for some more action.
Exactly, because I'm just saying, because you're reading the book and it's a lovely book and like stuff like that, and it's beautifully written, and then it's just like, yeah, but where's exactly? You're like, come on, someone stabbed somebody or something, or like you're talking about all this blood sacrifice and something like that, and it's very disappointing. It's like watching an HBO show with no nudity. It's just like, come on, HBO. What are you, Cinemax? I'm just saying.
That's nice. I hear what you're trying to say though, where it's like they're talking about their history and the lore of Mayan culture, and it was frightening to hear about. But you're right, when you bring it up, it's almost like, well, what would that look and feel like in the 1920s world? Because it's only ever spoken about, and I think that's a lot of current day religion. Oh my God, we can bring it to the vaccine as well, where it's like, unless it's affecting me personally and I see it in action and I see the evidence, it's really easy to refuse that it exists and we believe it. And I think it would have been really, really cool. You're right. When they're like, this is what it was, and they're wanting to bring that back. All right, well, let's actually see what that looks, sounds, feels like. And so we can actually register the fear and the dread if this just does become the reality. Yeah, okay, that's a really interesting point. And I hope your dad gets better. And hospitals suck.
He's in rehab right now, but he's doing good.
I'm glad he's getting a bit better. Thank you for that, Mike.
Oh, just to say one more thing that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Now, on my mom's side, my mom's side is Portuguese and Sicilian, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So one of them, they came to America around the 1920s, both of them, from separate paths. And I always think about, like, how they had the American dream is in a way, and
Yes.
people come here because they're like, oh, the streets are paved with gold, but whatever they're being told. And then when they get here, they're like, well, this is nothing like it. So it's very similar to the book, where it's like this very grandiose thing, and then it's just like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah, the reality. I know the myth, the hype, the story is more enamoring than the reality. I hear what you're saying. With
Exactly.
That. Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
Last but not least, Vaden, what did you give this one? What are your thoughts?
So I gave this book basically a 3.75 out of 5.
Okay, yeah.
So I enjoy quite a few things about this book, like the prose. There's a lot of great writing, especially which describes like Hunkame's in terms of like icy exterior and like basically the way his face looks like a jewel, stuff like that. All those kind of references were lovely to read about. Other than that, I enjoyed the mythology aspect, of course, of my mythology. There's tons of that, and I had no experience with that, so I enjoyed that quite a bit. One thing also was kind of interesting, which is like the path they took from basically, to get back his body parts, because he had to get 3 body parts back in the jade necklace. So along the way, basically, if he was fighting, it's kind of like almost like boss fights, like I said,
Yes.
it's like very much like the D&D-esque, and it was just fun to see each of the enemies they fought, like using one element at a time as their main thing. Like there was the first one was wind. The guy was using wind, and the second was the Shtabai was using like thorns. The third, the Huay Chivo was using fire, and then eventually she was the Cassiopeia Tune, which was apparently means stone, so she was earth.
Oh, what a great observation! Yes, that's really cool. But yeah, you like that, and they're the parts that get me really excited because it does feel like a quest. It does feel like this adventure. It does tap into like those really cool essences of questing that we're really used to. I love that. Thank you. Jeff 2.0 says, an additional complaint that I have is that they talk several times about Bukukume's great plan to gain more power by building the casino building in the desert like a pyramid and link it to Shababa. I don't know why I can't get that. Shabalba. I just think of the Star Wars character every time. What is it?
Oh, sorry, I think it's Shabay, but
Shabay?
Or Shabab. I can't say that.
I know,
I forgot now.
Same. As soon as I see it, I'm like, yeah, that's it. And then you get to articulate and you're like, yeah, Sabalba. But there is never any explanation as to how that would work. Yes, what it would look like. I think we're on the same page with that one, Jeff 2.0, big time. Kate, you brought up a really good point. Another positive and thing that you appreciated about this book is that it, sometimes sort of light and breezy and fun and fluffy is exactly what we need, because we're about to get into the thick of some heavy, dense books. What's the Moon Witch Spider Kid? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, good luck. That's going to be a slog. Loch Lamora, big book. Hero of Ages. These are getting... Yeah. And sometimes this is just fun. This is just like, oh, what a delightful read. So I hear you on that one as well. Avery says he was going to connect 2 existing points of power to essentially double the Chulel that is feeding the gods. All right. And Kate says, at least this isn't a horrific racist caricature. Yes, that Star Wars would often do. Yes, good point again. I've got some talking points that I wouldn't mind bringing up. I have the second half of the book description summary to go through, and I just wanted to touch on a couple of the talking points if we haven't hit them already. Vaden mentioned that Cassiopeia and Hudenka begin to fall for each other as he becomes more mortal, and what that was like, him taking on the human traits and what he got to learn from that, literally being more anchored to mortality, to human connection, to... Hi, Serrano. Welcome to Book Chat. We're talking about Gods of Jade and Shadow. And we're talking all spoilers, so if you've read it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does anyone else have anything they want to expand upon, sort of like the connection? I think I read somewhere, or maybe we spoke about it last week, where maybe it was a gripe I had, when a god is siphoning from a human, she's getting weaker, but he's not getting stronger, he's also getting weaker. And I just thought that that was sort of like, if there were some stakes, that could have been it. We didn't really ever feel that though, because we were told they were getting weaker, but we weren't being shown that as much. If anyone's got thoughts on that, agree or disagree? Yes,
say something about that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that was part was interesting to me too, because, like, yeah, as you said, he gets weaker, she gets weaker, and it's kind of strange because usually you would think the power will go somewhere, but it's just a net loss. Like I was hoping that like maybe like she would get some kind of power from him. Essentially, she would get like some kind of god like abilities or something to like compensate for her having his bone in her.
Yes.
But nothing happened. You're just like, okay, you're both just.
Especially with this duality theme, where it's like, if he's the god of death, is she more connected to death? I mean, she's been able to talk to the ghosts, but is it like something deeper than that, or is she more attuned with life because of the duality side of it? So if she's connected to death, and that the god is death, she as a mortal represents life. I don't know, maybe that's why she wants to go on the adventure, because she wants to live. Maybe interesting. In El Paso, Cassiopeia gives 7 drops of blood to a witch named Candida for information on their next target, Yue Shivo. She dreams of bleeding out in Shubaba, but does not tell Hudenka. They go to Yue Shivo's house, and the sorcerer traps them in a circle of fire. Vaden, that's the point you brought up. This was the quest where the element was fire. They escape using one of the guards and defeat Yue Shivo in his monstrous goat form, and then they take back the jade necklace. Afterwards, they travel to Baja California, where Cassiopeia tells about the dreams that she has of a life with him, and he begins to imagine these as well. What did we think of the sorcerer battle? Monstrous goat form. Did anyone in their studies and looking into Mayan mythology learn what the goat form was about? Hey, Jay Buntrock. Did you just get here? Did you just get here? Hello. How are ya?
I finished the book at like 5:40 Pacific, so that's when I jumped on.
I love that. What did you give the book? What did you like about it? What did you not so like about it? That's great.
I gave it a 3 out of 5. I actually liked the story arc for Martin. I thought he was properly humbled, and he came out of it kind of a plus, because he was, you know, with what Cassie did to him, and even what Kame ordered him to do, he realized how wrong he was in the past, and he came out of it a better person.
True, yeah.
And kind of like, there's some things that she seems to draw on stuff outside of the theme, but because when Hudenka says, you make me want to be kinder, it kind of reminded me of As Good As It Gets, where Jack Nicholson says, you make me want to be a better person. And then I got a Never-Ending Story vibe when she almost lost herself in that forest, where it made her think she would, you know, she died an old woman alone. And it was kind of like when Atreyu lost Artax to the swamp of sadness.
Why? We're having a good day. We don't need that. That is an instant mood destroyer.
Yeah. And then what I didn't like is her rules for her world seem to be on the fly-ish. Because everything kind of just, it seems like, oh, but you can do this, and this happens like this. It was never really established beforehand. kind of like the climax of the book. Like, how did she figure that out?
Got it. Yep, that was the
Yeah.
point that I had, where I was hoping that there, throughout the story, there would be things that were happening, learning curves, learning moments, information gathering, whatever it is, and then they would be put to use on the road. And that's why she beat Martin. Martin was just like, he was kind of going a bit quicker because he'd done it before, or he was like familiar with it in some way. And then he made it to the city. That's what didn't make any sense. And then she wandered into the ocean. And I'm like, what? The whole point is to go to the city. I don't know.
I guess you're supposed to think that when she died in that lake, somehow that lake was connected to the tree, and that Cayman god brought her to the tree.
But we'd never discussed that, had we? It's because
Yeah,
Martin...
I'm connecting faraway dots there.
Got it. Okay. Aaron says
They
Martin
pulled
reminded... Oh, yeah?
I was going to say they pulled a Emperor's New Groove kind of thing, where it's like, how did we get here, Krunk? I don't know. By all means, this doesn't make any sense. He shows a map of like, how did we get from way over here back to the castle here? It's like, nothing makes sense.
Right. Well, it's making a little bit of sense to Kate. Kate, you've got answers for this.
It said in the book that like he warned her not to step off the road because she would get lost. So when her and Martin scuffled, he pushed her off the road. So that's why she didn't go to the city. She got lost because she couldn't find the road anymore.
Right. So this is the thing where it's like she's lost. She's feeling, defeat. And then she sacrifices herself to Hudenka and then wins. Can anyone explain that to me?
Well, I can't say that I'm an expert at this, but now, like, I know that in certain cultures, the goat is actually considered to be a lucky thing. You know, when you sacrifice a goat and you smear the blood, it's supposed to help. You know, as opposed to it being in, like, the Christian mythos as a goat being evil.
Right.
You know? So, but I would think that, again, this is just my opinion, I feel like this situation was kind of like a baptism by fire in a way, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Where, you know, she's getting blessed in a way in order to get the ability to overcome the obstacles or just agree with the situation he's in, you know, giving her the strength. That's my point of view.
Got it. Instead of winning by... Baden says, instead of winning by reaching the palace first, she won by going around the rules by sacrificing herself. And Kate says Mesoamerican religions are sacrifice religions, so it made sense to me in that regard. I think and then Lisa says, I kind of read it as because she sacrifices herself, she was transported to the endpoint, maybe. I think what was confusing for me is that the only other time we'd kind of had sacrifice mentioned or referenced, they were both in a very negative way. Vuku cannot win because he wants heads rolling. He wants human sacrifices. Hello, Alvaro. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to Book Chat. And then the other time we heard about sacrifice was, again, Vuku saying, kill yourself, and then I'll bring you back and I'll make you mortal and I'll sort you out. But yeah, just end it right now. So that was the... Hello, Sincerity1119. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to Book Chat. That was what was confusing for me, because I am learning through anything that's been told to me on the pages. So the only two mentions of this, I was like, sacrifice bad, sacrifice evil, sacrifice is making sure that Vuku is getting what he wants. It was his idea. This is the world that he is envisioning and trying to put back into place. So that was what was the confusing step for me. Sincerity First Time Chat says, if you were able to see physical, irrefutable proof for the existence of God, would you change the way you live? That's a really, really great question, and actually something that I was talking about a little earlier, where, I mean, you can replace God with, some people it's science, a lot of, you know, any sort of belief system, even though science shouldn't be a belief, but I'm just trying to think of a modern day example. Unless you've been personally affected, it's tangible, you can see it, you've had the experience with it, unless you have your hands-on experience with it, it's just a version of hearsay, or it's, you know, someone else's truth. It's not a part of your truth. And I think that some people can believe and some people refuse to believe unless they have bared witness to it. In terms of me answering that question, I mean, there's so many what ifs with it. Like, what if I already have seen an existence and proof of God? But what does that even look like? See, that's my adaptation of it, my version of what I would believe that to be. I don't know if this is, I don't think religion in a sense can be completely universally blanket in that way. But I will say that as a woman of science, when I do see if this happens and this is the result, then it's like, oh, cool. I am looking at evidence. I am also agnostic, if that answers your question. I suppose a more appropriate premise to that question would be, do you believe in God? There you go. I'm agnostic. I believe in something. I believe in something. I think that the universe, the galaxies, space is way too big for something not to be bigger than me out there. I found that I don't agree with religion, but I do agree with faith. I think religion has been dictated and changed over the course of too long, and I've seen it be weaponized. But every interpretation is different, 100%. Going back to some of the comments here about sacrifice. Great. Aaron says, I think the confusion is because it didn't explain those things, that the quickest path is to be a sacrifice to get to the city. Yeah, that was never explained. Kate says, yes, but Vuku Kame's heads rolling are not true sacrifice. She did it herself consensually. There is greater power in consensual blood magic. There you go. Hey, Max, thank you so much. 10 months. Nearly a year. Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, but I guess it's like I wasn't an expert on consensual sacrifice. And again, this is my culture and my whole life experience. Don't kill yourself. Don't do it. Don't kill yourself. We're trying to provide any other alternative to ending a life. So I think that for me, again, it's like my bias is that is usually bad. And it gets rewarded here in a way. Jeff 2.0 says, the other issue I have with sacrifice is that both of the gods very clearly understand the rule of Xibalba and magic, and yet neither seemed to foresee this as a possibility in affecting the contest. There you go. And they're gods. Vaden says, exactly, a willing sacrifice has a great deal more power and is needed to cause certain events. There you go. Okay. Aaron says, it followed the myths and fairy tale story structure that things happen and we just have to accept that this is the way that things are with no explanation of why. I like the why a little bit more. Michelle says, sacrifice can mean many things though, not just ritualistic offerings. Cassiopeia has already been making sacrifices her whole life. She's willing to both give up so much, but she's still a fighter. Oh, there, that's great. There's my breakthrough that I needed. Thank you, M. the Cartographer. That's fantastic. Thierry says, I like the quote from the Santa Claus when the kid asks his stepdad, have you ever seen $1 million? He replies, no. And then the kid says, it's not because you haven't seen something that it doesn't exist. Yeah, good point. Sincerity. We're talking about a book with mythology. Can you just respect my beliefs if that's cool? I'm not a fan of people projecting their religions onto other people. I'm all for people sharing their perspectives. Like, you could be doing anything. And you're trying to convert me? Oh, ambitious. KPW says, that's a very important thing to say because faith and religion are not the same thing. That's how I feel about it as well. And Vaden says, hey now, gods coming from asteroids makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, I get it. Avery Adventurous says, there's many examples in fiction of white people going to a Mesoamerican culture and trying to stop the sacrifices, refusing to accept the fact that the people there often wanted to be sacrificed. It was an honor for them. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, I mean, does she have to over-explain for someone like me to educate a lot more about this topic? Because I feel like, yeah, if I saw someone sort of sacrificing themselves, and I know it happens, like it has happened a lot through the times, especially with forms of protesting, to feel like they need to be heard. You know, the monks that would set themselves on fire. So I do understand that. I feel like there just wasn't enough information for it to make sense for someone like me. And I do love that other people reading the book had zero problem with that as well. It's a me problem. It's a me problem. KP Dub says, my question to my religious friends and family is always this. Do you practice thing because your upbringing raised you to do that, or because you studied dozens of religions and that was the one that spoke to you personally? Because if it's how you were raised, isn't that kind of a form of brainwashing? And Cash22 says, this was exactly the thought process that led me out of religion. Oh, sincerity, thank you for that. No, I'm glad we had a conversation about it and we were able to clarify. I appreciate you bringing that clarity to me. And sorry if I misinterpreted. KB Dubs, that's how I was raised. I remember I was 7 years old and all my friends were getting baptized and they got a new middle name, and I got awfully jealous that they got a new middle name, and I was like, I'll go on this dang name. And I was like, Mum, am I getting baptized? And she goes, if you want. I was like, what do you mean if I want? Don't I have to? She's like, no. I was like, were you? And she's like, yeah. When I was a baby. And I was like, well, shouldn't I? She's like, no, you don't have to. Learn about it. Figure out what it means to be baptized. And she kind of explained it to me. She's like, do you want to kind of dedicate yourself to a religion? Being 7 years old? I was like, I don't know. And she's like, are you learning about religion at school? And I said, yes. And then I remember a year later, I came home and it was the old little grandmas who helped volunteer at the church that would teach us religious education. And at 8 years of age, I was taught that anger was a sin. No, I was taught that anger was a sin. And I came home and my mum's a psychologist and she got angry and I said, oh, you're not allowed to do that. That's a sin. And mum went, no, that's an emotion. Anger's not a sin. It's how you act out in that anger that can become a sin. But if you're getting taught that anger is a sin, you are no longer allowed. She ripped me out of the religious education classes, which is cool because I got to hang out in the library. But the school that I went to, the high school that I went to, we had religious studies, and I learnt Buddhism, Judaism, Islamic religions, Christianity, Catholicism. We learnt about every single religion. And I remember being like, I like this part, but I don't like this part. And Buddhism, I was like, I like this part, but I don't like that part. And I couldn't find one that fit all. And I was like, I just like the message that they all kind of preach, which is don't be a dick. And so I was like, I'm just happy to sort of like try to adopt that in my life. Instead of having to follow a series of rules and some of them be backed by fear, where if you don't do these things, you'll be condemned to an eternity of hell. It was just be the best that you can and learn how to be a little bit better every time. So anyway, that's my story about religion. If anyone else wants to share theirs, I'm more than happy to provide either a platform or read out the comments like what Kate has done. I am a hardlined atheist, but I admire when people have true faith. And you can tell the people who have true faith deep in their heart, and the ones that are doing it either out of fear, hatred, or just because that's what they grew up with. Yeah, I hear you. There is a difference. You can tell. Yes. TJ says, I'm just go down to the Cordy and change your middle name to Danger. Just go to the Cordy. That's very funny. Avery says, I went to church once in 4th grade with a friend and they told me I was going to hell and I never went back. Why were you going to hell, Avery? At 9 years of age, why were you going to hell?
Because I wasn't saved.
Oh, no. That's so damaging for a 9-year-old.
Yep, they were given the whole spiel about one day Judgment Day is going to come and everybody who's in this church, we're all going to heaven and everybody else is going to hell. This was supposed to be like a youth group. Like I wasn't even going to like regular church. Like I literally, like, I had just moved to the area, so I was trying to make friends. And the person was like, hey, you know, my church does a fun youth group thing. You want to come? And I was like, sure. And that happened. And I was like, nope, this is the worst idea I've ever had.
And the easiest way to kind of like, that's the thing. And this is like, I can make the comparison to being online as well. If someone comes at you being like, you fucked up, you're awful, you said this wrong, you're getting cancelled, da da da, you just leave. You don't want to go, oh, I'll get better, or let me keep trying to make these mistakes since it's so unforgiving when I do. You bail from the situation. You remove yourself from it entirely. And there's like not much where I'm standing from difference between trolls online who bully you into silence and then being 9 years old and being told you're going to go to hell because you haven't been saved. Because the response is the same. You shut that down and you leave. You protect yourself. You get safe. Oh boy.
I can think of an amusing story. This won't be that long.
Sure.
When I was living in this town called Floral Park, right? There was a church right across the street from me, and there was a priest or a deacon, and he was like, "Oh, you should come to church someday. You know, it'd be great for you." I'm a child, as I told you, and so I went with my brother, and we would go to the church, and the guy was like, you know, he gave the whole Jesus spiel and whatnot. And I started telling my dad, I said, Dad, I'm starting to have nightmares about Jesus Christ. And my dad was like, well, maybe I shouldn't keep you in Sunday school. And I literally got to the point where I thought that I was getting harassed by angels. I was that delusional.
Oh, impressionable. You're impressionable.
It was a whole thing. Like, I remember going to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was like, oh, your dad tells me that you're seeing angels. And I remember going and doing like this whole elaborate thing and saying that the angels were having a party and they spilled the cake and I ended up cleaning the cake up. It was like a whole thing. Very impressionable. Yeah, but I just thought it was an amusing story to tell you.
I think, yeah, I feel like whoever said that, maybe wait until you're an adult to form the decision. Because that's the thing, like when fear is instilled to follow a set of rules. I don't know. I am very grateful for how I was raised with that. Catch22 says, I was raised Baptist, and as a teenager, I came to the conclusion that modern day Christianity missed the point, so I walked. I hear you. Game Wizard says, that's why I walk the line from the movie Dogma. It's better to have ideas. You can change an idea. And then Catch22 says, because let's be honest, if God wanted us all to join them in heaven, they wouldn't have made it so freaking difficult. KP Dub says, that's it. Many of the philosophies are all well and good. Don't kill and such. But when they say, if you eat this or say that, you're going to hell, that's a bit too much. Michelle says, I would be considered lapsed Catholic now. But I don't like that because it implies failure. But I just think I leveled up. Yeah, you've evolved. You are applying experience, learned lessons, logical and critical thinking to what you've been taught. I think that that's incredibly, evolutionary of you. Baden says, I was Christian as a kid. I prayed to get a good grade on a test, and I didn't get it, so I became an atheist overnight. Later on, I did develop actual reasons for being atheist. There's nothing stronger with setting a value than getting let down by God when you're a kid. But, I mean, what is the lesson in that? It's like you're asking for something bigger than you you're opting out of doing the work. It's like, I will relinquish my responsibility, my dedication to studies. You'll take care of it. Sort me out one. Okay, cool, that didn't work. All right, I don't need you. I gotta do it myself. All right, yeah. Sincerities says, do you believe that our deeds have consequences and rewards in an afterlife? I think a better question would be to ask if I believe in an afterlife. I believe in the present. I believe in the effects that we have on our next generation. I believe that every single action has a consequence. So if you want to apply that logic, then actions can have a consequence if you believe in an afterlife. But again, I think that relinquishes the effect of the immediate consequence in this life. Oh, I'll do it, but I'll pay for it later. It's not the now. And I think the consequence is in the present. Today is a gift. That's why it's called a present. I'm not going to allow that word, but I'll read your comment, Kate. Going to hell for being a 9-year-old non-saved, but the person molesting a bunch of 9-year-olds is still getting into heaven. And that is why Kate's atheist, is my guess. Toaster Poster says, my problem with religions is that the mythology and the philosophy are too intertwined. I grew up with no religion, and I feel indifferent about the whole thing. TJ says, I just think we put too much emphasis on how important we think we are in the universe. We're not even a dot on the universal radar. I feel like that from time to time as well. B-Rock Vandal says, my in-laws have actually asked if they could take my children to be baptized. And I was like, no, thank you. Not a line that you guys should be crossing. KP Dubs says, oh, wait. Oh, no. Okay, that's a good point, KP Dubs. Ember and Talia says, I like that we get to see at least a little of Cassiopeia examining some of the ideas that she was told, like what a particular haircut really means about a person, or just having a conversation or being in the same room as a man was perhaps a thing that she could do and not automatically be a bad person. Ember and Talia, thank you, A, for bringing it back to the topic of the book, but also B, for talking about sort of like Catholicism, because there's different types of religion explored in this book. And again, we are talking about, oh, you have a haircut and it's short, you're a tramp. And let me, that's what, thanks, Sincerity, take care, have a good night. And then using sort of religion and weaponizing it to scorn, where it's like, oh, if God's seeing you being in a room with a man, he's going to see that you're a whore. I don't like it when religion gets weaponized like that. Oh, God hates gays. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you. Jesus talks to me all the time and he says he hates gay people. It's like, what? Oh, I'm pretty sure he hates you. For saying that. For spouting that bigotry. Lisa says, I was raised traditional Roman Catholic, and let's just say none of my siblings or I continued to go to church once we hit 18. Kate says, this is an interesting discussion too, because Cassiopeia is having the same thoughts. She was raised deep Catholic. She has to reconcile what she was taught with what life is. Oh, hold on. She was raised deep Catholic and has to reconcile what she was taught with what life is actually showing her. Like there's just there are much bigger things going on in this book. And she got super hung up on being alone with a man. And I think that was the important, like a really interesting moment where she's like, oh my gosh, I'm breaking rules. I'm hurting my religion by being this close to a man. And it's like, babe, take a step back. That's a god. It's not even a man. This is like an immortal being. But you're caught up on this very sort of like Catholic trait. Yeah. Thierry says, my religious class teacher told my parents I should switch class because I debunked Jesus' miracles in an essay. Amazing. And Brontalia says, Julie Sweeney has a really interesting monologue called Letting Go of God that I've really enjoyed watching. I think she does a really good job of taking the audience through her experience of examining her own beliefs. Again, I really want to have a conversation about religion in a way where there are no right or wrong answers. I respect belief. I respect religion. I respect that everyone has their own way of thinking. I don't respect when you want to change someone's way of thinking. They've made that decision for themselves. I've made my decisions for myself. As long as we can respect that, fantastic. But I also hope that this is a safe enough space for people to share their thoughts and beliefs as well. We have everything from Catholic, Christian, we're talking about both Catholic and Mayan mythology, agnostic, atheist. We've got the whole spectrum, and I like that we can be incredibly respectful about that. B-Rock Vandal says, I'm curious what everyone would choose for themselves, Quebec or New Orleans. What do you mean by that? I need more information. Lisa says, I don't know if that was all religious views or just the views of the time period. Maybe both. Yeah, and it's super interesting to see how religion can ebb and flow with the times. Like, let's kill witches. God's telling me that they could be a witch, so God wants me to kill them. Oh, they didn't drown. They floated. Oh no, wait, they didn't float, they drowned. Oh, they weren't a witch, but I'm glad that the Lord got me to test that out. It's like, you're excusing murder. Aaron says, I'm always amazed at people who say some deity spoke with them, because let's remember that son of Sam said his neighbor's dog possessed the devil and told him to kill people. Turns out he had a mental disorder instead. Huh. TJ says, it's frightening that some religions are the most wealthiest entities on this planet. It is purely business related these days rather than power/control related. I think one of the smartest things that the church did was not get taxed. That is one of the best business moves and business loophole I've ever seen. Do I believe in it? No. That's why they're so damn rich. That's why people start charities and siphon all their income through the charity. Therefore, it cannot be taxed. And it's all a donation write-off. Oh, it was a choice at the end of the book, Maud. Laurie said he missed speaking French. So to choose between Quebec and New Orleans. Oh. Yeah. I was too caught up in her not feeling safe with him and not understanding why that they were driving down the Sunset Road together. Thank you. Whoops. Catch-22 says, the negligent beauty of religion is that it allows all sorts of behavior to be rationalized. Yes, the devil made me do it, or God told me to. Yes, exactly. Yes, I don't like that either. Lisa says, Catholicism says our God is the one true God, and Cassiopeia, Cassiopeia, I did it, I still do that. It's phonetic reading. Had that, and then is confronted with another God, and that would have thrown my world through a loop when I was young. Yes, true. I could do like John Oliver and then register Geek Bomb as a religion. Thierry, I think I've joked way too many times that Geek Bomb's a cult and that my followers would sacrifice themselves for me because I'm a deity, but let's just not really indulge a messiah complex. I'm happy to pay my taxes. I'm not even an American citizen and I'm happy to pay my taxes. No, Kathy does. No. Let's look at some other talking points. Wow, man. Wow, that took a spin. It was an interesting conversation, though. I think we kind of hit it. What did we think of the linear storytelling? I felt that this felt like a D&D campaign. Let's break down the ending. Is there anything left in this book that we... Oh, you know what I did get? And this is thanks to Vaden. Bing! We have this book club study kit from Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Where it's like, this is a book club kit that we can go through if we'd like. The discussion questions. Number 1, what were your first impressions of Cassiopeia, Hudenka, Martin? How did you feel about them by the end of the book? I still didn't really know a couple of them. I don't know if you guys can read and I can pop it in the chat as well to go over, but if you guys want to comment the question, the number of the question you'd like to answer. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can read them all out and let me know which of the questions you'd like to answer here. So number 1, what were your first impressions of Cassiopeia, Hudenka, Martin? How did you feel about them by the end of the book? Question number 2, how did you feel about the relationship between Cassiopeia and Hudenka? Question number 3, what did you think about the historical period and setting of the book? Could you see this as could you see this as a modern day adventure? Question number 4, what did you think about the ending? Do you wish anything had been different? Would you read a sequel to this story? If so, would you prefer it to feature Cassiopeia and Hudenka, or would you prefer a story in the same world with new characters? Question number 5, discuss Martin's perception of the world versus Cassiopeia's. Why do you think, raised under the same roof, they see things so differently? Comment the question you would like to answer. I want to talk about number 2. How do you feel about the relationship between Cassiopeia and Hudenka? When I was doing research online on Twitter for this one, not Twitter, Reddit, someone said as far as the trope of very, very young woman, borderline young girl, being with a very, very, very eerily old man. We see this all the time with the vampires. They're hundreds, if not thousands of years old, and they're with a 17-year-old. So this is a fantasy romance trope that we see a lot of. But the comment said, even though it is a trope that I despise, I felt it actually was explored quite well in this book. Okay, question number 2. Aaron, how did you feel about the relationship between Cassiopeia and Hudenka? You say...
I said predictable.
Why is that?
It followed the same kind of formula you'd get for like a typical love story of, oh, she's unsure of him because it's like this godlike being, and then she starts showing her kindness that she's never, like she said it to Marta, like, he's shown me more kindness in 3 days I've been with him than you and the rest of the family showed me my entire life. So it's like already, big check mark of she's gonna be smitten with this guy. Who she's already having the sinful thoughts of, oh my god, I'm alone with a man this whole time. Oh, what will people think, kind of thing. And she's like, just clearly gonna start falling for him because he's showing her that kindness. He's showing her some modicum of respect, or at least taking her opinions into account rather than just outright dismissing them.
Oh, and he's really, really, really good looking. That's a very important. Yeah.
She's like, he's impossibly good looking, and then as he becomes more human, he's still handsome like any other guy I would see in town, kind of thing, but he's still good looking.
And then she doesn't think she's pretty at all, but he can't stop telling her how beautiful she is.
Nonchalantly says, "Oh yeah, you're beautiful. What are you talking about?"
Me?
Yeah.
Michelle, you said that number 2. You know what I like? A couple who lets each other go. What do you mean by that, Michelle?
I think that this, to continue off of, your conversation with Aaron, that story could have easily turned into him doing crazy magic and her becoming a god and living in the underworld forever with him, My Immortal Romance style. And, I think Avery has a good point in here that Hudenka was willing to let her go, or willing to give up everything, but she was like, no, we can't. And then he accepted that, which, the autonomy of doing that. And I think that that's good, especially in, a couple, quote unquote, that is so young, because he's a new human, so he's youngish, right? Mm-hmm. In this human body. So, I knew some couples who did not make the college leap from high school, and it felt a lot of one person was letting some stuff go for the other person, but they were 18, and so I kind of liked that they both let each other go.
Yeah, I do too. And Aaron was saying it looked like it was getting set up that she would be turned into a goddess of life, and have the god of death and the goddess of life. But you're right, these guys, they've known each other for not very long. KP Dubs just gifted you a sub, Michelle. That's really sweet. Thanks, KP Dubs, gifting the subs. Appreciate that. You get it in real time appreciation. That's very lovely. Yes, and just to reiterate what Avery commented, for number 2, I love that Hudenka was going to give up everything for her rather than going the other way around. And I love that Cassiopeia was smart enough to give him up. Fatal Flower says for question number 2, I usually like a little romance, but their romance felt entirely unnecessary. Almost like it took the power away from the protagonist, turning a dark and formidable god of death and a young woman on the brink of discovering her own strength into little more than cute old love interests. Interesting point. Ooh, that's good. That's a good answer. I like that a lot.
Can I just
Yeah.
add one more thing?
Jump on in.
Back on this whole thing. The relationship kind of reminds me of the character in The Last Unicorn.
You were saying that
Unicorn...
in a comment, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know or read it.
Are you okay with me kind of spoiling one part of it? Because I know we haven't.
I'm okay with spoilers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the unicorn is kind of like Hunkame, where in order to protect herself, she is turned into a human. But the danger is that she'll soon, over time, forget that she is a unicorn, that she is special, and that she's even starting to fall in love with a human prince. But then, of course, by the end, she has to become the unicorn once again. Except, unlike Hunkame, she remembers the experience. She even learns regret, which no other unicorn except her has ever learned.
Wow.
So that is one key difference. Like, I like that story versus this one, because Hunkame feels like all the changes, all the experience he just learned over the course of this journey is basically erased as soon as he gets his godhood back.
Yeah, right? It was all for naught. Well, they said that there was a little kernel that survived and blah, blah, blah. But yeah.
Yeah, but the unicorn kept everything. Like, she doesn't stay with the prince anymore because she's a unicorn and she has other responsibilities elsewhere back in the forest she lived in. But it's like, she remembered, she feels regret now, whereas before she couldn't.
Yeah, right. Also, like, spending forever with Hunkame, more like Hun cardboard. Kind of a little boring. Little boring. Vaden says, for question number 3, which was, what did you think about the historical period and setting of the book? Could you see this as a modern day adventure? Vaden says, I think the historical period and setting was pretty important to the story. I'd be really curious about how the book would change if it was placed in the 2020s instead of the 1920s. Ooh, yeah, I like the historical part of it though. I liked learning about that era instead of like, I know what the 2020s looks like. Interesting though. Does anyone want to jump in on, did anyone else answer number 3? Kate says, I like that she didn't stay with him because Cassiopeia's whole arc was freedom. If she turned into a god, she would have lost that and been stuck in the underworld. If he'd become human, Lasercorn! Hey, bud! How are you? What did you get up to? Is that how you do it? Here it is. No. How do we find out what you were just playing? What were you up to? How was your evening? I'm doing book club. We're just doing final thoughts on this book, God of Jade and Shadow. The community has given it everywhere between 3 to 5 out of 5 at the moment. It is a Mexican-Canadian author called Silvia moreno-garcia. And it's a book about sort of the 1920s and Mayan gods and mythology. It was pretty cool. But if this doesn't make any sense to you, I do apologize. If you are in the comments and you want to say hi, tell me your favorite book, because I'd love to hear what people read. But in saying that, going back to Kate's comment, she says that I like that he didn't stay with him. If she turned into a god, she would have been lost and stuck in the underworld. But if he'd become a human, she would have to essentially babysit him, since he doesn't know anything about being a human, and become his mum just as much as his lover. Interesting point. Interesting point. But this book wasn't written by a Mormon. Hold on. This is to Avery's comment about, like in Twilight, when Bella wasn't allowed to see her family or friends anymore, she had to choose between Edward and literally everyone else. Hunkame would never have expected that of Cassiopeia. There you go. Yes. But Bella's also giving up her humanity, so she become a vampire. Just playing some Fall Guys. Have a great dinner. Thank you so much again. Oh, we're doing some fan casting in the Discord, which is awesome. Zahn McLaren for the Sorcerer Brothers. Ooh. Joe Bunt Rock doing some casting, if you want to jump on in there. Toaster Poster says, yes, the romance was ultimately a pit stop on her way to freedom. Pastor Ferrell says, have you read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin? It has been on my list. I actually believe that, because I host Geek Bomb Book Chat and Nerdist Book Club, So we technically do 2 books every month. Well, I do, and I drag everyone along with it. Dorky Lady 08, thanks so much for the follow. Welcome to Book Chat. It is on our Rex list, and I think that we're going to be doing a sci-fi themed poll coming up for Nerdist, and that's the book I put forward on it. So I would really, really, really love to read that book. Pasferal, you've just been gifted a sub thanks to KP Dubs, who brings the subs over here. Adam Vision said, if I wrote a book, would you read it? Adam, if you wrote a book, I would fall off my chair. But what would you write a book on? And Jeff 2.0, amazing, said, I didn't read the first 4 seasons. Would I be lost? You can stay, Jeff. Well done. That was a good one. That was a good one. Yeah, Adam, what are you going to write a book on? If you could write a book on anything, what would it be? Did we have any other answers to these questions, by the way?
Yes, mine was number 5.
Number 5, discuss Martin's perception of the world versus Cassiopeia's. Why do you think, raised under the same roof, they see things so differently?
Well, like I said in the comment earlier, they are, are polar opposites in a way that they live their lives, but I felt like they came to the same conclusion, like, Cassiopeia, she's living with her mother and other various relatives, basically, like I think you mentioned before, comparing her to Cinderella, and Martin is more like the, well-to-do kind of, at least my impression, well-to-do, has things handed to him in a way. That, again, this
Why,
is just
though? Why? Because he's a man.
There you go. So, yeah, exactly. But in the same token, like I said, as they are traveling their journey together, they are actually, for a lack of a better term, are bettering each other. They see each other's faults and try to improve them. I know that sounds out there and a little bizarre, but that's my point of view. It seems like a growth kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. I think to really kind of answer question number 5, why do they see things differently? It is patriarchy. It is the men have authority and a rite of passage just by being a man. They they're the heirs to the fortune. They're the men of the house, and so they have all the power. Whereas the women in that household have none of it. They don't have the same rights. They aren't seen in the same way. And what Cassiopeia does as a girl is undermine, humiliate, and embarrass Martin by overpowering him. And he feels like he has been...
Yeah, he's basically humbled, which it's in turn...
Emasculated is the word you're looking for.
Emasculated.
Oh, I was thinking humbled, but emasculated
No,
is fine.
and I'll tell you why it's not humbled. Because it wasn't a learning curve for him. It wasn't a learning moment where he starts to self-reflect. He then has to gain the power that she took from him in that moment by re-oppressing her.
That's valid.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
but yeah, I'm glad that you still got the point of where I was trying to go. I may not be correct with my wording, but I'm glad you got where I was trying to go.
I got what you're trying to say. I don't think that I saw it in that same way.
Duly noted.
Yeah. But I mean, Kate and I are kind of agreeing with you. At the end of the book, it's closer to being humbled, but through the rest of the life, it was emasculating, at least in his eyes. So you're right, and I think it goes back to a point earlier. Was it Aaron? Did you say that you thought that, or was it Jeff, said that you thought that Martin had a really good story arc, where he did learn the lesson in the end? Someone said that he had a good arc. B-Rock Vandal, it was interesting to learn that when Martin heard grandfather say to Cassiopeia, "Why weren't you born a boy?" That was the point where he decided that she had to be his enemy. He felt threatened by her. The male patriarchy has basically said, "You are the girl is stronger than the boy." But yeah, I like that, you were trying to say that there was a moment of being humbled. I think the moment in which Martine was humbled was when Cassiopeia could have punished him for his behavior, and she instead forgave him. Not instantly, it would take time, but she opted out of sort of like revenge. And that was the humbling moment, because he learned that his behavior was unacceptable in that regard. Look, we are done with time. Our book for next month is the final in the trilogy for the Mistborn series. Now, the Mistborn series does have a lot more books, but we are just focusing on what they dubbed the trilogy, which is Hero... I've got a Wikipedia up. Well of Ascension, which we did about 4 months ago. Wait. Why are you now...
The Final Empire was the first one.
The Final Empire, the Well of Ascension, the Hero of Ages. So we've done Final Empire and Well of Ascension, and we're now on to the last of that, which is the Hero of Ages. Now, apparently, it's followed by the Alloy of Law, which is Mistborn Era 2, and then Wax and Wane, which again is in the same universe, but different time. If you're still here, fantastic. If you've read the Mistborn trilogy, we do have 4 episodes, part 1 and part 2 of both of those books, up ready for you to watch on the YouTube. This is going to be a pretty heavy book, and the fact that we are going to be reading Lies of Loch Lamora for Nerdist, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 Wednesdays time, the 30th of March, we'll be doing that. So for the next 4 weeks, you're going to have to not only finish the Lies of Loch Lamora, but get to the first half of the Hero of Ages. They're both kind of steampunky-esque, aren't they? Cool. B-Rock Vandal says, I still haven't finished book 2. I've got a lot of reading ahead. Good thing I love to read. I love that. Got lots of time to read Lies of Loch Lamora. Mr. Necromancer says, so it's the 6th and the 13th. We will be doing, yes, exactly. The 6th will be covering the first half of the Hero of Ages, and the 13th will be covering the second half of the Hero of Ages. We don't know next month's book for Nerdist just yet, but today is the 9th, and we won't be doing Lies of Loch Lamora until the 30th. So, a lot of reading. If you're like me and you already lost the book, it was brand new as well. It was a brand new book. I bought it again. Brand new. Idiot. How did I leave it behind? It's like the size of a doorstopper. It's the size of... I was going to say the size of the GD Bible, but I probably shouldn't be doing or saying that. Aaron says, which is a great way to spend my birthday, doing book club. Yeah. Miss Necromancer says, where do we stop? What is the first half of the Hero of Ages? And to that, I say, that's a Lisa question. Lisa checks out how many chapters there are and figures it out. Oh, have you got it for us already?
Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's a question of, do you want to go exactly midway, or do you want to finish out one of the parts? Because it is 82 chapters plus an epilogue. Mm-hmm. And part 3 of it ends on chapter 44. So if we want to do and read through chapter 44, so we end on a part, that would probably be the best story-wise, I think.
I agree. And usually we have more to talk about in the second half, I find, especially when it's a Brandon Sanderson book. The first half, we would talk about like the characters and the world building and all that. So let's do 44 chapters for the first one.
Yeah, so it'd be 44 chapters for the first half.
And then we'll bring it on home.
That'll be the first 3 parts.
But yeah, first 3 parts. Thank you so much, Lisa. I knew I can rely on you for that one. Oh my gosh, we got to get reading, huh? And I spent my bloody credit already because I had to rebuy Lies of Loch Lamora. Never mind. Hey, is there someone that we could raid just to drop on by like Lasercorn did for us? We'll pass it on. Pass on the good times. Who have we got on? You know what? Because he's been a big proponent of and a big supporter of Geek Bomb. Let's go raid Luscious Lou. He's playing some Dead by Daylight. It's pretty gory and gruesome, but just he's been a big part of the Geek Bomb community. He's gone to streaming quite a lot, so it'd be kind of cool just to say hi to Lou. You will know him as Luscious Lou. And he's been in the chat. Thank you, Michelle. It is so a lot of fun. Jack, thanks always for lurking. Really appreciate that one, even though you don't usually know what we're talking about. It's lovely that you're still here. Thank you, Vaden. Thank you, Geeky Heart. Appreciate that. Thank you, Avery. I can't wait to read this thesis, get an idea of it. Everyone drop some bombs and say hi to Lou, okay? Good night, everyone.